Hello and welcome back to a Squirrel Plays. Today we're going to be having a look at how a solo TTRPG session went down, and yes, it was mine. I wanted to share it for a couple reasons. One, there's people out there that are curious how the solo TTRPG thing works and what it actually looks like. Two, I thought it was a fun idea. And three, I did mention it in the last video that I would probably make a video about it. So here we are. And it kind of works out, right? The last video was about the Tricube Solo rules themselves, and now we get a video of seeing them in action. Sort of. What do I mean by sort of? Well, it wasn't entirely Tricube that I used. While I did use the solo rules for generating the adventure itself, the game system rules I used to play were, wait for it, my own. That's right, there's some similarities between Tricube and what I've been working on behind the scenes for my own little squirrely system, so I figured it would mesh pretty well with the solo stuff. And you know what? It certainly did. Now, the system I've been working on uses D12s for everything, whereas Tricube uses D6s, so really, that just means mine is twice as good, right? Alright, so not my best joke, but you know what really would be twice as good? Clicking that like and subscribe button, ho ho ho. I got 'em. Anyway, really, I think the only thing you need to know about the system in order for this story to make sense is that the actions you take require a challenge roll, which is pretty typical for a TTRPG, but the value will always be between 1 and 12. You will roll at least 1 d12, but if you have skills related to that task, you can add additional d12s to the roll, and the result is the highest value rolled. Now, unless I'm mistaken, I believe that is called a dice pool system. Super simple stuff for a super simple squirrel. And if you're wondering how the Tricube Tales Solo stuff works, well, you can hop on right over here and watch this video. Now, on with the show. Tricube Solo does recommend that you use one of the one-page settings to get you started, but since I had spent the past few days listening to the Epic Nate's videos about Fallout lore, I decided that's where I wanted to go. Seriously though, I love the Fallout universe. The radiation and all the nuclear stuff is just straight up magic gone out of control. I know technically it's not a fantasy setting, but you know what? It's close enough. That's beside the point though. Post-apocalyptic, totally not the Fallout universe, was the setting for today's solo TTRPG adventure. And the general goal here was to figure out what destroyed the world all those years ago. And to do that, you investigated different buildings and locations. And on that note, old man Tenor over here, no idea who he really was or where he came from, told me of a building he deemed worthy of investigating. That was enough for me to go on an adventure, so I hopped on my motorcycle and away I went. As I sped along on my motorcycle, I asked the GM if I encountered anything along the way, and he didn't know shit, so he used the Tricube Solo rules to determine whether or not I did. The answer was yes, and he drew a card from the Tricube deck. 3 of Spades, Standard Agile Challenge. So 2 totally not rad scorpions popped out of the ground and tried to take a swipe at me. I set a challenge roll for the squirrel system, used some skill dice, passed the roll, and went right on past them.
They're the same picture.
And right about that moment, Glee came in asking why I'm making motorcycle sounds instead of working, and I said, "Get out of my office, woman, I'm doing science." It's called research. So distractions aside, I slid past the totally not rad scorpions just fine and continued on my way. I finally make my way to what was probably an old office building of some sort, and by some miracle, it is mostly still standing. I park the motorcycle and approach on foot, asking the GM if anyone was outside guarding the place. The GM, clueless as always, used the Tricube rules for yes or no questions, but with a possible caveat this time. He rolled a 6 and a 4, which came out to be yes, there is someone, but nothing else. Turns out there was no caveat. Then he decided to use a table from the Dungeon Denizens page and rolled up a witch or a hag. This was translated to there being a woman, or at least what was left of her, bumbling about outside the building, but refusing to stray too far from it. Her entire body was glowing a bright green, and how she was still alive was a total mystery. Totally not a glowing one from Fallout. What can I say? The GM wasn't very creative. I asked if I would be able to sneak around or if she was hanging around right in front of the entrance. The answer was yes, I could sneak around if I was careful, and would need to roll a 6 or higher using the squirrely D12. Boom, I made it past her. So now I'm in the building, and what do I see, Mr. GM man? He said I was in what used to be a lobby, and after rolling a couple D6s, there were some strange stains on the floors and walls. The material those stains touched were very, very slowly being eaten away, and in the remains were tiny little glowing mushrooms. So, being the big brain squirrel that I am, I decided I would like to take one of those mushrooms. The GM told me to roll to see how safely I could pluck this thing out of the ground, and I did poorly. Turns out I didn't handle it so well. I got some of the strange mushroom juice on my skin, and it burned, but not too bad, just a little tingly sensation to keep things interesting.
Nice.
Anyway, the mushroom was now mine to keep and safely stored. I was then informed there were some human remains behind the front desk as well as a smashed computer. I searched the desk and nothing, because this GM sucks. I then made my way sneakily through the only other door in the room and asked what I saw. Then the GM decided to roll entirely more dice than what was needed. I should also clarify, I absolutely did not follow the Tricube rules to the letter for solo play, and I just kind of did a pick and choose approach, which is actually encouraged. Anyway, dice, which apparently comes out to be abandonment, macabre apparatus, how do you pronounce that? Which apparently comes out to be abandonment, and then this word that I had no idea what meant, and then when writing the script, I had no idea how to pronounce, so I'm just going to put it on the screen right there. There you go. And then it also meant explosive and or smoke. And then another card on top of that, because why not? Easy agile challenge. And when you squish all that together, it means you see a room with 4 human bodies on the floor. Their skin was still intact, suggesting that they hadn't been here for a long while. However, on said skin were some of the same stains from the previous room, slowly consuming what it touched and replacing it with glowing patches of skin. Whoa-ho-ho! There were also more of the tiny mushrooms on the corpses, as well as one much larger than the rest on one of the bodies. The big mushroom suddenly bursts and its glowing spores spray everywhere, which I had to avoid. Almost a crit. I rolled out of the way as the mushroom exploded and spores came raining down on the corpses. And as you probably guessed, those same corpses started to groan and move. They were confused at first, but once they saw me, they decided it was mealtime. And you know what that means. Anyway, with that out of the way, I had to roll to see what random effect I got from accidentally touching the mushroom in the previous room, so on went the D12, and nothing bad. The bodies had nothing of story interest on them, unless you count the fact that they didn't even have any weapons on them. They weren't dressed as though they were adventurers or scavengers, but I was also unable to determine what brought them here. There were no signs of them being trapped or forced, and it seemed as though they merely came here to die. Other than the bodies, there were 2 doors in the room. One took me back the way I came, and one went somewhere else. Naturally, I went through the next door, which means more dice and a card. Easy, crafty challenge, with a feature of stairs, steps, or ladder, and an event of entangled or pinned. Also, the answer involves hate or anger, but that was just something extra to roll to see what happened. Or was it? The room we got this time was a small doctor's office. It had the weird propped-up bed thing the patient sits on, a small amount of counter space, and a sink, another door at the end of the room, and a still-functioning computer terminal. So I rolled up some D12s to see if I could hack it, and I passed. Honestly, not sure what I would have done if I didn't. Inside the computer, I found some notes on various patients. The doctor seemed to be recording mental behaviors as well as their physical health. There were some notes about skin softening and being easily cut, as well as some discolored blood. One note of interest mentioned how several patients claimed to feel extremely anxious, but always claimed to be fine once back in the office for their evaluation. The plot thickens. There was also an option to open the other door at the end of the room. A click is heard and the door slides open. Turns out it's an elevator, and inside of the elevator is a corpse. An old, dried up, nothing but bones kind of corpse. And judging by the attire, it would seem it was once the good doctor. Oddly enough, I found a pistol on the doctor's remains with only a single bullet missing. There seemed to be only one floor below this one, so I pushed the button and the door slid closed. The lock was set, and the gear started to move, but the elevator only shook slightly before stopping completely. The elevator was stuck, and the door won't open either. So I thought, hey, I'll use the panel in the ceiling to get out. Then the GM was all like,
elevators have hatches on the top, but they can't be opened from the inside. It's a safety feature and meant only to be used by servicemen on the top of the elevator.
Man, what a nerd. Just my luck to get the one GM that used to work on elevators. So anyway, I started blasting at the ceiling where I hoped the latch was and trying not to roll any nat ones. A few shots later and we were in business. Latch open and Squirrel out, I was on top of the elevator. And from there, I realized that the only other floor this facility had was a long, long, long way down. Being the squirrel that I am, I started climbing my way down. And being the unlucky squirrel that I am, I had some accidents on the way down and bruised myself up a bit. But I survived. The GM rolled to see if the elevator broke free and started falling, and no, it stayed in place. Room roll. Easy, brawny, challenge, mod, moss, or plants. How convenient! And entangled and or pinned again. I crawled out of the elevator shaft and discovered a rather large laboratory. There were several machines, tables, and workstations to be seen, and everything seemed to be intact, completely unfazed from the destruction above. Almost. The same glowing mushrooms that were on the corpses and stains earlier were everywhere down here. And they were much, much larger and plentiful. I searched the lab a bit, checking out different rooms and whatnot. Didn't find too much of interest other than lots of mushrooms. One room, however, was just stuffed to the brim with overgrowth. So I thought, aha, this must be where it started. But since it was so stuffed, I couldn't even get into the room. I found a long pole to try and slide through there and push some of the mushrooms to the side and hopefully see something, but as I was doing that, I heard something approaching. Some giant beetles were coming my way, and they had the same mushrooms growing on them. And you know what that means? That's right, it's combat time, woo! Except I didn't make it. There were 2 giant beetles. I killed one of them, but the other one crushed my neck. It was tragic. I never found out what was in the room. Never figured out what was going on with the bodies either, or the totally not glowing one outside. I mean, I have a theory on what was holding it all together, but I'll let you try to come up with that one on your own. You can tell me in the comments below what you think the story was. And really, ladies and gents, that's how it works. It's that easy. I only used a very small part of what the Tricube Solo rules have to offer and got myself a nice little adventure out of it. As you can see, you don't have to use the Tricube game rules if you're using the Tricube Solo rules. There's probably several other systems you can plug it in with and use as you want. I also didn't do the thing with the cards where you keep up with them to determine your final scene and how things end for you, but really it didn't matter because I died. But hey, now you kind of know what a solo TTRPG adventure looks like. Or at least I think that's what it looks like. Who knows? I was kind of making it up as I went, but honestly, I think that's the point. And with that done, let's move on to today's shout out, and that would go to all of you. That's right. I appreciate all your kind words, hopes, wishes, and prayers of late. For those of you that don't know, Glee got into a really nasty car crash some weeks ago and is pretty much out of commission for a couple of months or so. Her knee got busted up really, really good. So between that, all the insurance calls, running around from point A to point B, checkups, physical therapy, hunting for a new car, getting snowed in for a week right after surgery, it's been an absolute madhouse around here lately. You might even say it's been a bit squirrely. Nuts even! But the good news is that the knee is healing up good and proper so far, and she's starting to feel a lot better. Actually, probably by the time this video goes out, if things continue the way they are, she will at least be doing some remote work and able to hobble around a little bit on her own. We'll see. And that's it. Y'all tell me what you think was happening in the story and what was going on with the mushrooms, or tell me some of your own fantastic solo adventures. Which one was your favorite? Squirrel out!